the Primitive Patterns Podcast. It's time to live your mystery. Welcome back to the Primitive Patterns Podcast. Today we're super lucky to be joined by our guest Dave Wood. We just had a little glitch there. It's like we're repeating it here, a little bit of deja vu. But Dave, we're super happy to have you on. Dave is a peak performance coach, focuses a lot on breath work and nervous system regulation, working with both general population and some of the most elite level athletes actually in the world. So yeah, Dave, first of all, thanks for coming on, and we're super glad to be able to talk to you today.
Easy. Cheers. Thank you.
We'll just jump right back into that first question. So just with the nervous system work that you do and your day-to-day work with professional athletes and as well with general population, just the similarities there between the two and how you go about that.
Yeah, the exercises are kind of the same for everybody. The important thing is just how you change the variables based on the individual, whether they're an athlete, mum or a dad or a corporate athlete. It's just changing the variables based on the individual and being able to get on the same level as them and align the training to their goals and purpose and mindset, and be able to identify their patterns of behavior that are holding them back, replace those with new patterns of behavior, give them more self-awareness. We're all pretty similar. Athletes tend to have three things. This is like generalizing. They tend to have something behind them that's pushing them. That can normally be some sort of trauma that they've been through in life, normally as a kid, a bit of a chip on the shoulder, something that's driving them, a very clear destination. So they have, very clear goal and purpose. That's the thing, if an obstacle gets in the way, either push through it or go around it when you have a clear destination and an ability to be able to be present and focus despite, all of that. So other commonalities, I guess, like what I see is fear of failure, fear of letting people down, fear of what other people might think, tend to be like, things that we all share to some degree, especially fear of failure. And so that can hold us back. And I like to I do keynote presentations, and I give this one talk, which is around reducing allostatic load, the wear and tear on your body as a result of exposure to stress. And I talk about, we do not differentiate between athletes and non-athletes. This is like training for life, right? And, if you are specialized, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It might be sitting in front of a computer for 8 hours. It might be you're a tradie, you're a builder. You have to train for that. You have to train for that specialization, because specialization creates imbalance. And so I like this, there was a document that I read, The Making of a Corporate Athlete. I can't remember the two guys, but they took 2 decades of working with elite level athletes and the learnings from that into the corporate world. And I love this idea of like, treat yourself like a corporate athlete, because a lot of corporates don't treat themselves like athletes, and they don't realize that the demands that they're putting on themselves physically and mentally require some form of
Definitely. Like we see it all the time too with people. And I know one thing that we are always trying to not push onto people, but with people that we work with, talk about is just a reconnection to the basics. Like even for us, we've now been down in Guatemala for 4 or 5 weeks, and you're out in the ocean every day. You're getting sunlight every day. You're eating all local food, and just your overall stress as far as like things you have to do, people you have to see, it's just dimmed way down. And I already feel a complete difference in my performance, in my sleep, just in my ability to navigate a day. So what are some of the things that you talk to people the most, like those foundational patterns for making sure that they can handle life and that allostatic load is managed? Like, what are your main things that you implement there so people, one, become aware of the stress they're under, and two, they then have tools to deal with?
Yeah. So anyone who's listening might be like, well, that's great for you. You live in Guatemala and you're surrounded by bush and ocean. And so then you take like your average, worker who, if you take like a corporate professional and they work in a city in a high rise, then how can they implement these things that you're talking about? how can they integrate this stuff that you're integrating into your everyday life that helps you achieve better energy, better balance, better focus, better productivity, better sleep? How can they integrate that? And that's the question, is because most people that I work with don't have access to what's behind you, in that sort of form where they're immersed in it every day. So that's a question for you. How do these people that are listening, that they may work in New York and have a ridiculously busy life where they've got to sit in an office all day?
Yeah. So to be honest, that's one thing that I struggle with a bit, because even back home, we're surrounded by nature. If I want to kick off into the bush for a few hours, it's a 5-minute drive from my house. There's a big body of water, and those are the things that tend to regulate me most. So even when I'm working with clients and we're going over breath work and nutrition and proper sleep, there's always a part of me that's like, the biggest piece for me is missing for most people. So yeah, how do you actually compensate for that lack of connection to basic source? I do find that difficult as a coach.
Yeah, well, yes, and people find that difficult. So the key there is the first thing is like, okay, what actually works in terms of, if we take your average person who it might be difficult for them to access all these things that are right behind you there, how can they integrate active forms of recovery into their day that allow them to shift back into a calm state? And what are those active forms of recovery? And one step before that is, what are the pillars of health? What are those foundational pillars that you need to get right before adding anything else? And that is, daily exercise, prioritizing your sleep, reconnecting with nature in a deep and meaningful way, tapping into that energy, some form of stress control, nutrition, and I may have missed one, social interaction. Those are the keys. Those are the pillars of health. You have to get that right before you integrate anything else. That's my belief. And so with the clients I work with, it's making sure that all of that stuff is squared away, because that is the foundational work. Once we get that right, then we start layering active forms of recovery that allow them to do one of two things: put them into a stress state to create calm, or shift them from whatever physical and mental state they are in into a calm state. That's much harder than the first one. We find it easy to expose ourselves to stress in order to get calm: ice bath, sauna, exercise, whatever it might be. Versus shifting from whatever physical and mental state you're in into a calm state is much more difficult, because we equate busyness with productivity. Then the idea of shifting back into a calm, focused state during a busy day I think, like, subconsciously we have this thing like, we got to be in this upregulated state to get everything done, and otherwise you won't be productive. And actually, as you know, the key, the best performers in the world are the ones that get the balance right between stress and recovery, and can shift into a recovery state during their day so they can protect their energy, and all the other good stuff. So coming back to like that, my original question that I posed is, how can you integrate these things that you're talking about that are so important, that help regulate your circadian rhythm, getting sunlight, getting out in nature, getting in the ocean, because they are the most powerful forms of stress control, like reconnecting with nature? And the answer is that nature is all around us. I had a client that works in the bottom of Auckland City, and he said, hey, it's great for you. You live out at Piha and you've got access to all this stuff. And I said, man, you're 500 meters from the water. At lunchtime, what does he do now? He goes down to the waterfront, walks out onto the pier, and he does a meditation. And he does it for 5 minutes. And that's the key, is to just integrate those types of powerful recovery rituals that layer active recovery, like breath work or meditation, and being in nature. And there's no excuse, because most people have got a park close to them, or they can go outside, or they can get sunlight. And it's just getting people to understand you've got to get into your creative mind, and you don't need like the bush and the beach right on your doorstep, because nature's everywhere.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think a big first step, like you kind of touched on it there as well, but is the individual wanting to do those things and actually wanting to make those changes and to implement those things into their life. Like you said, us being in Guatemala, we're able to access the sun and nature and good people around us that we have good conversation with, and healthy food all the time. So maybe if you're somebody who works in that like corporate level job, you have to find small ways to get those into your life. So like you said, whether it's like walking down to a pier to meditate for 5 minutes at lunch, or deciding to wake up 20 minutes earlier to walk to work. You know, if you live in a bustling city, instead of taking the subway or the streetcar, take the extra 20 minutes in the morning to walk to work. And maybe you actually do get a bit of that sunrise and that sun exposure early in the morning. So I think that's definitely a huge tip for people, is like, it doesn't have to be the thought of having to be all in, meaning like, oh, I have to quit my job and I have to, you know, just live this life fully, is just not realistic for people. And I don't think that is really what anybody is telling them to do. It's just make sure that you want to make those changes and just find the little things throughout the day where you're actually going to be able to implement them, and they're going to go just such a long way.
Yeah, you have to integrate active recovery into your day to help balance your nervous system, get the balance right between stress and recovery. And the whole thing to that is like, you have to put purpose behind it. If you don't have purpose, then you're not going to do it, right? So with the clients I work with, it's sorting out what is their purpose, what's the thing that's going to drive them to do this stuff every day. And once you find your purpose, that becomes the driving factor to make sure you do your mobility work, your strength work, you reconnect with nature, social interaction, all the things that are so important that we need in terms of balancing our nervous system and prioritizing our, getting our energy right. And for a lot of the businesses, like the employees are waiting for like a culture change, like that. But you can't wait for that. You have to be like the change, and you have to get creative. And like for a lot of my clients, I tell them, take a kettlebell to work. The muscles are dumb. They don't know the difference between going to the gym and doing it at work. Or you go find the stairwell and you get it in during lunchtime, and you got to make it work for you. But we get into this very narrow way of looking at things, and it's about shifting our perspective around all of this. And it's easy. These things are easy to get into your day. The thing is, we have to make it ridiculously simple because people are so busy. So it's not 45 minutes of going to the gym. It's 10 minutes. 5 lots of 20 squats in the morning. Something else in the afternoon. 5-10 minutes. A 5-minute breathing flow every day. And once you get into the routine, once you get people into the routine becomes addictive because the brain just loves patterns, right? It likes consistency and patterns. And so once you have someone in a routine with this stuff, then you can start adding more layers. But I think like a big, where people go wrong in terms of programming is that we add too much. I send my clients away with just one simple thing to do every day, 5 to 10 minutes. And I tell them, if you can't do this, don't come back. There's absolutely no point in coming back and adding anything else until we can get you in a routine. And then, but again, like going back to the purpose, you've got to get their purpose right first. Or they have to be able to identify their purpose. For me, my purpose for doing my mobility work from 9 till 10 every night and doing my strength and conditioning and doing my meditation is that, man, I've had my health taken away from me, and I won't let anything jeopardize that again. But I also want to be high functioning I want to be surfing when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old. I want to be high functioning. And, working in the ambulance service, what I saw repetitively was people stuck in their bodies for the last 20 years of their lives because they hadn't invested back into the thing now with these things that we're talking about. Just simple things every day that allow you to prop your energy up, to build your confidence, to create patterns of discipline and consistency and, build on your physical and mental health.
Yeah. And I think that message, and we're trying to cultivate a lot of the same things, because an issue I don't want to call it an issue, but something that I see that I think is wrong. I don't know if it's the same in New Zealand, but in Canada quite often is, before anyone has thought of purpose or looked at their diet or looked at their breathing or looked at anything, we're pushing people into talk therapy, which is fine. I've done it myself. I've talked to therapists about this, that, and the other thing. But if you're not doing the other stuff, you're never going to get to the root of it. And you're never going to give your system a chance to be calm and to deal with emotion in a proper way. So I think all the work that you're doing, not only is it just, you need to do it to be a basic functioning human, but you also need it if you just want basic emotional regulation that you're not going to get from, just sitting in a room and talking to someone, in my opinion, if you're not doing the other, like you said, just the 5 minutes of breathing, getting out into nature, taking a peek at your diet, throwing some shit out of the cupboards. Like that basic stuff is going to go a long way for not just obviously the physical and the mental calmness, but also your ability to deal with the complexity that is life.
Yeah. We should never rely on other people at the expense of taking radical ownership of our own physical and mental health. And talk therapy is an incredible form of mental well-being therapy, but humans need three things. They need to understand the underlying mechanisms of what they're doing. They need the skills, and they need practical stimulation so they can apply that knowledge and skill into a practical dynamic situation. An example would be like if we're going to do ice bath, we would teach the person, the underlying mechanisms of what happens to your body when you're in the ice bath. Then we give them the skills to be able to regulate their body's stress response in the ice bath. Then we put them in the ice bath and they apply the knowledge and the skills into that practical simulation. And that's where, that's how the brain learns. But often, what you'll do is you'll give someone the knowledge and the skills, put them in the practical simulation. And because when we put information into our brain, we have our own, way of looking at things and perspective of the world, we jumble it up and we come up with our own perception of what we've learned. And then we get them into the practical simulation and they almost do the opposite. And so the practical simulation is the opportunity to be like, oh, hold on, let's go back. So I think, we need all three of those things in order to create like substantial change. And talk therapy is great, but I feel like, it should be in combination with really getting people to understand what's going on under the hood in their own bodies, and then giving them, practical exercises so they can go.
And what you just said on the practical simulation, now this one's a little bit more advanced, but I'm just going to say it here. About 4 weeks ago, I started doing jiu-jitsu. I'd never rolled in my life. I walk in there, I'm like, I do a breathing practice. I do meditation. I'm strong. I've ran marathons. And then I get into this situation where I think I have all these tools that will work, and I get on the mats and I'm just a fucking mess. Like breathing's gone out the window. It feels super chaotic. And now as I've continued to do it for weeks, slowly but surely feeling a little more confident. But I think that is a big piece of all of it, is like, learn the tools, but then put yourself in a situation where you actually have to apply it, because you don't know if it works until you actually have to use it.
Yeah. So it might, exactly. And if you're teaching someone like, I don't know, like thought, thinking and emotional control, and you are giving them, you're talking to them about this stuff, for me, you then need a practical simulation that will bring that up. So whether that be like, we use things like running the sand dunes where you're in a, really physiologically stressed state. How does that affect the mind in those moments? Is your mind latching to the end? Are you present? Do you lose form? What is the thought processes that are going on? And these practical simulations just allow people to embed the knowledge, but to also bring up their own pattern. It brings up their own, when you're in a stress and pressure environment, you will always go back to your habitual patterns of behavior. And some of those are good, some of them are bad, right? And so putting people in these practical simulations allow them, if you give the right cues and the right teaching, it allows them to put the thumb on some of these patterns of behavior that are coming to the forefront, whether they be, physical and mental patterns of behavior, normally a combination of both, so that they can identify that and create change. And the cool thing is we only have one stress response. And so the same stress response that you're training in the pool or in the ice bath or when we're running the sand dunes is the same stress response that's activated when someone pulls in front of you in the car and you get all, agitated, or you're having an argument and you lose your temper, or a thought comes and that stimulates thinking and emotion and outcome. It's just one stress response. And so we can start training a pattern of behavior that gives us more physical and mental control of our body's stress response. And that is like, that's what I love. That's what I'm passionate about and what I love teaching.
Do you find, when, as an example, when you have the people running the dunes and afterwards they're feeling that upregulated physiological state where a lot of the times they're going, holy fuck, this is what I feel when X, Y, or Z happens in business, or this is what I feel in this other area? Like, did they begin to connect the dots there at all, or is that just no?
Not until we get back into the classroom.
Okay.
Because we always start, it's a good, obviously they do, because we bring that up. when we're in the classroom, but we always start with the practical simulation. We start down on the beach. Man, it's so cool. Like, you get a group of people, and I'll give you an example. Like, with our workshops, we will always get people in nature first, because it allows them to be more vulnerable in terms of sharing. Because we do a lot of, we walk up into the bush, we get in a circle and we share, what some of our weaknesses, and we get people to talk. And man, when you're in nature, A, it strips away all that noise, all that head noise. But B, it's a really calming space. And what we find is that it's totally different than sharing in the classroom. So, but the first thing that we get them to do as in our workshop is just to jog along the beach. A really light jog, like zone 2 cardio. Get their heart rates up a little bit. We jog for about 500 meters, and 99% of them are mouth breathing. And then we sit down in a circle, and this is what starts the weekend in terms of more self-awareness. Hey, guys, do you realize that just under really low intensity exercise, your mouth breathing, what is the mouth designed for? It's designed for eating and talking, and it's part of the digestive system. Yes, there is a place for mouth breathing during exercise, but it's during medium to high intensity. Yet under really low intensity exercise, your mouth breathing, this is how we adapt complacently to stress. And people just they've not even given that any awareness, right? We do the same run, but now you're going to be breathing in and out through your nose. What are the differences? And you get people in the circle talking about what differences they experience. Air hunger. Oh, they recovered faster. They were breathing less. And then we get them running the sand dunes, put them into a really physiologically stressed state. And we bring in things that they have to work on. When it gets really uncomfortable, do not lose form in terms of your breathing rate control, in terms of your running. When it gets really uncomfortable, what is the condition of your mind? What's happening up there? What it tends to do is latch to the end, grab it, bring it back. Now, that is the definition of mindfulness. You're improving your ability to sustain focus and be present in what you're doing. When you finish the run, lie down. How quickly can you shift from the red back to the blue? And so there's all these things that you can integrate in that most people often really never think about,
Yeah. Another thing you said there that I think is important, especially for, I know men and women, but I'm just going to circle in on men a bit here, is that a lot of people think in order to be mindful or to cultivate some form of meditation that you have to be sitting there with your eyes closed, fucking thumb on your fingers. But in reality, if you can just be present during a run, present during a workout, present in the water, present during jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of surfing, there's a lot of physical things that you can cultivate that exact same mindfulness and presence without, the idea that you have to sit and meditate. I think for a lot of people, it's actually an easier entry point to mindfulness if they can start to become aware of patterns as they're moving through exercise and other modalities, because it seems a lot less, I'm going to use the term woo-woo, even though we know the immense benefits of meditation. But for some people, just getting them to be mindful in an active form I'll give them a bridge to enter into that space.
Yeah, well, people are skeptical. By nature, people are skeptical. Why? Because look at, we've been lied to so many times about, this is healthy for you. Oh no, it's not. The food pyramid, and then we're following things around instruction around COVID and all this stuff, and people are skeptical. And so when you mention breathwork and meditation, some people are skeptical about it. I don't use breathwork and meditation so much as I use things like, do you want to improve your focus, your energy control, your self-awareness, your ability to regulate your stress response? And one of the most powerful ways of doing that is through meditation. Because meditation allows you to stop and listen to the condition of your body and mind and have a better relationship, especially with this thing up top. And for most people, if you get them to lie down and do a meditation, it's going to agitate them. And so they don't have a good experience. And what I've, noticed with a lot of my clients is get them to do something first that expends some energy, then shift them into a calm state. And you're much more likely to get a better outcome and get a little bit of buy-in in terms of, right, we're going to do this now as a practice. But yeah, I also find that if you're going to give someone something to do, let them put their own little spin on it, unlock their creativity. So it's okay, this thing is actually mine. I think that helps a lot. But yeah, you're right. Meditation can be anything, man. Meditation can be I think the most powerful forms of meditation is just being in nature and actually just listening and being present and tapping into the energy. The energy behind you in the bush is different than the energy on the beach, and it's different than the energy in the ocean. And when we say like we're designed to be connected, to nature, what is that connection? It's in our nervous system. When we're in nature, it activates that calming division of our nervous system, wide open space using your peripheral vision. Your brain's picking up on all this information. Your senses are picking up on all this information, relaying it through your brain. Expansive space, the sounds are calming, the wind rustling through the trees and the birds. And this is all stuff that like we're inherently designed to be in nature. And it's such a calming place. And when I'm agitated or I'm dealing with stress or anxiety, whatever it might be, my go-to tool is getting into nature, and I'll walk up to the waterfall. It'll take me about 20 minutes to half an hour for this thing to start softening a little bit in terms of like being more present, but it always happens after 20 to 30 minutes. Then I'll get up to the top, jump in the cold water, and then I'll just sit there. I'll layer some active forms of recovery like some breath work, but often I'm just like gratitude, but often I'm just sitting there in full mental clarity, and then I can start allowing my mind to wander onto ideas or things that I need to like sort out. I bring them in, and I'm in my creative mind. Stolen focus. Our genius zone is our ability to focus and be present. And once we lose that, nothing becomes enjoyable. Like this, when you go surfing and your mind's somewhere else, you never enjoy the surf. But when you're in that sort of flow state, 100% focused and, into what you're doing, you enjoy it so much more. And that's the same with everything in life. But our focus has become so impacted because we're just multitasking all day, and the brain just recognizes patterns. And when we're scrolling through the phone, we get addicted to multitasking, high resolution imagery, and then the idea of going and doing something and being present and focused is lost. So it's a huge problem, and it's a problem for myself that I've had to work on and be really disciplined with, because I run a busy business and I have to be on my phone, and then I'm scrolling for 10 minutes, and then I'm on YouTube, and it's like,
man, there's a lot of shit going on. One thing that I've thought about lately quite often, and I've seen a correlation in my own life, is that the more present I am in a day, the happier I am. It's not like I don't just wake up happy. It's something that I actually have to cultivate through. Did I do my reading I wanted to do? Did I have a good conversation in person? Did I get out into nature? Did I do the things where I'm singularly focused, or a podcast, like things where I feel I'm fully immersed in the moment actually make me happy? When I feel anxious and shitty and I'm being a bitch is when I'm doom scrolling on my phone and eating mindlessly and just not being a human being. Like for me, present activity in any form is actually what makes me happy.
Yeah, you have to have a hobby, something that you do that allows you to get into flow state. So some of the best athletes in the world, if you look at some of the best performers in the world, they all have like something that they do, whether it be a fighter who plays golf, or something that is outside of your sport or your job or whatever it is, a passion that allows you to get into that flow state, lack of awareness of time, 100% present and focused on what you're doing. And what ends up happening is that, for me, like, I'll give you an example. Like for me, when I garden, I get into flow state. I'll go down, I'll pick up a few weeds. 2 hours later, I would have been right through the garden, and I look at my watch and I'm like, holy shit, 2 hours has gone by. Lack of awareness of time, 100% present and focused on what I'm doing. And what happens is when you do that, that ripples over into performance, your ability to be, because you are training ability to be present and focused. One of the fighters that I work with, his hobby is like dancing. And so when he goes and he does his dancing, he's just 100% present and focused, getting into that flow state. And that definitely ripples over into his athletic performance. And so I think that's what that's why you guys surf, and why you do like the jiu-jitsu or the MMA or whatever else your hobbies is because it allows you to be present and focused, and we love that. It's like
a big one for us is trail running, man. Like we'll when we're back home every Saturday morning, there's a group of guys that go out and we'll hit a good long trail run, and like just the amount of focus you have to stay on and not trip and fall, and you're out in nature for 2-3 hours. And when it's done, it's like you just feel complete ease, and you've done nothing but run on a trail, like nothing fancy. Like anyone can do it.
Yeah, I just want to, yeah, exactly. And just to touch on like focus, we often think of focus as this, dialing in on one thing. Actually, a much more realistic form, powerful form of focus is allowing your mind to wander off onto things, to grab them, to bring them in, and to unlock your creative mind, right? And so if you think about when you were a kid, when you were bored, what did you do? Your mind wandered off onto like an idea, a game or whatever, and you brought that in and you came up with you unlocked your creativity. But what are we doing now? Like, if you think about waiting in a coffee line, what are most people doing?
Yeah, on the phone.
Yeah, just scrolling.
Yeah. So, and then you're walking to the car from the coffee line. What are we doing? We're walking around with this thing in front of our face, and so we don't allow our mind that time to unlock our creativity through the form of focus of mind wandering, if that makes sense. And focus again, like focus is our genius zone. You lose that, and instinctively, you feel lost. I've definitely noticed, like, since starting my business, that my focus has been really challenged. And where I start noticing it is I'll sit down to watch a movie and I can't. My brain is craving multitasking. So I pick up the phone, I look at the phone for a little bit, and then I forget about and then I'm back on the movie. So it's been a real challenge, man. And this is like part of how we're adapting to what is going on around us. Our brains haven't evolved much in 10,000 years. We're not designed to be doing what we're doing. We're designed to be, and I mean like being specialized, and we're designed to walk, to run, to be in nature, to eat healthy food. Of course, we've always had stress, but not the amount of acute stress that we're experiencing in one day.
Yeah.
And so we're adapting. For a lot of people, we're adapting complacently to all of this. I'm just like really aware of it, and so even though it's still impacting me, I know that I have to integrate active forms of recovery into my day to help balance all that, and at least achieve some form of balance in my life.
Yeah, and I can feel the same. There's times when after dinner I'm sitting on the couch with the two brothers, and everyone's just zombied out looking at their phone scrolling, and like then someone catches it and you're like, put your fucking phones down, boys. Like, we haven't said a word to each other in 25 minutes. We're just looking at some bullshit thing. And it, again, going back to what you said, a huge part of the nervous system regulation and health is that social connection, and it's just fragmented at every angle, because oftentimes in any social setting, like, no one's really engaging. Like, it's just everyone's like this, looking, or they talk for 2 minutes and then they're looking at the phone, and you actually can't create depth there.
Yeah, so I was out having lunch the other day just by myself, and I was sitting there, and this couple sat down and they're both on their phones, and I was kind of sitting there like kind of just disgusted. But then I kind of realized, man, I do that.
Yeah.
I do that. And sometimes I'm not present with the people around me because I'm distracted. But, oh man, it's such a big problem. And I think like just being aware that stuff is stealing our focus and how important our focus is, and putting some boundaries around it is, because it's all around us now, and it's not like, especially with these kids, they're growing up with having to be on devices, and if you kind of not, you're left behind, and they use them at school, and all their mates are on there. And I've got my nephew staying with me at the moment, and he's addicted to the thing, absolutely addicted to it. And you see when they get on there, it's just, but you can see the ripple over effects of that.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to touch on, because you briefly had touched on it, was just working with professional fighters, and one of the UFC fighters that you work with, Israel Adesanya, for people that are listening to the podcast. When you were, I don't know how that all kind of came to be, you working with him, but when you were approached by whether it was him or his team to work with him, was that kind of an eye-opening moment as to like, wow, this work that I've been so passionate about and this work that I've been doing, like, there's a lot of power behind it?
Um, I don't know. It was a very sort of. Um, I don't come from a background in sporting performance. My background is in lifeguarding, professional ocean lifeguarding, practical experiences of traveling around the world for 9 years, practical experiences of going through my own hardships and having to navigate that and come out the other side and all the learnings that go with that. And then, degree in health science and working in the ambulance service as an intensive care paramedic in a first response Jeep for, 13 years and bringing all that into understanding human behavior. But I guess the good thing about working with the fighters is that I don't think it would have worked if I'd gone into like like a rugby team or where there's a lot of red tape stuff and it's very regimented. Great thing about the fighters is they don't have all that. You go listen to an interview of a fighter versus a football player. It's totally different interview, right? The fighters just are able to they don't have all that restriction, and so they are open to the stuff on the peripheries. Because I was really at that point when I started working with the fighters, I was bringing in stuff that definitely wasn't, breathing development, breathing training. It's massive now, but even now, in most of these athletes, they're not training breathing specifically to build adaptation to breathing capacity. But this was something that I was bringing in that was relatively new, and I was just lucky because they were really open to it. And starting working with like the UFC fighters in Israel, when I started, it was totally different than what it is now. And it was like a process of learning, right, what do these athletes actually need, these fight athletes actually need? And it became pretty evident pretty quickly that they need better recovery, and that the overtraining is impacting their sleep, predisposing them to injury, physical and mental fatigue. And then so like how do we get them to start better protecting their energy and bringing in active forms of recovery into their day and having more control. So and it was working with those UFC athletes over the last sort of 4 years. I look back to what we were doing at the start, and it's just totally changed. And it's been an interesting process, but I manifested all of that stuff, like starting this whole process in my shed out here, just building a gym on my property in this tiny little shed that had the lawnmower and all the tools in it. I manifested all this stuff. And by manifesting, I kind of mean like I identified that that's what I was going to do, and I made a plan around it, and I just started heading in that direction. And I knew that if I just kept going and I was okay with setbacks and failure and the hardships that go with building a business, and that I'd get there eventually. And now, with the business now, it's like working with some of the most elite, high level performers in the world. And sometimes, it's like, fuck, I pinch myself. I'm like, holy shit. It's like, how did I get here? But I got here through lots of hard work and through like my own life experiences and being able to apply that. Because it doesn't matter how much information like you still have to be able to apply that and understand what that person needs at that moment. And that's a skill I think that you can't go and study that. You have to just either have that or not.
Mm-hmm. I love what you said there too about manifestation, because you hear that word thrown around all the time and people just sit there and think they're going to manifest something, but it does come down to what you've done. And I look up to that a lot. You have that vision of where you want to go. And then it's like, okay, taking action, dealing with the bullshit. But knowing that gold star of where you see yourself will happen if you follow the path like wholeheartedly.
Yeah. The thing is, you never make it. Like, you never ever make it in life. It's like some people say to me, "Oh, you've cracked it, you've made it," and I'm like, I couldn't feel further away from making it. And what is making it? You always just want to be shifting the goalpost, right? And you set the goal and you almost achieve the goal, and then you shift it a little bit, and it's this you never make it, and it's this constant striving for self-betterment. I put a lot of pressure on myself, probably too much, and where I want this to go in the next 5 years is like, it's light years from where I am now, and what I'm doing now. And whenever I've ever got into anything, whether it be lifeguarding or paramedicine, I want to be the best at it. I want to be the absolute best at the thing. And so that keeps you like constantly pushing, but that can have its drawbacks as well, right? Like your biggest strength can be your biggest weakness and vice versa. And I think we all tend to put like a lot of stress and pressure on ourselves. Like I work with a lot of kids.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these kids put so much pressure on themselves, like a ridiculous amount of pressure. And we talk about, coming back to the start of talking about commonalities in people. I ask these kids every time I work with them, is stress good or bad? And most of the time they will say stress is bad. Is failure good or bad? Most of the time they will say failure is bad. Why? Well, you go Google stress. It's all badness. Stress is good.
Hell yeah.
Stress is how we create robustness in these body systems and adaptation, and failure is part of success. Everyone knows that. But what is the culture? When athletes lose, what do? We berate them. We get on social media. We pull them down. In New Zealand, it's like particularly, we call it tall poppy syndrome. But, the All Blacks lose in the newspaper. It's all pull them down. And so these kids are like watching that instinctively. They're like, well, if you fail, you just get berated. So they stop putting themselves out there because of fear of failure.
Yeah. And I just want to touch on what you. Oh yeah, go ahead.
It's such a shame because we have. I feel like athletes hold the answers to a lot of these mental health things around, man, if you fail, you get back up, you dust it off and you go back again. That's incredibly uncomfortable, right? That really exposes you, and they're exposed in front of everyone. And then there's the pressure of having to go back in and what happens if I fail again? I'm going to get berated. And so they're constantly going back and towards the fire. And, it would be great as, when these athletes do lose, we get behind them and we prop them up.
Definitely.
I guess a lot of that is like, that is that thing that I talked about that's pushing them from behind, driving them, is this, perhaps some of that negative feedback. And, but yeah.
Yeah, I think a really good message out of that too is kind of going back a couple of minutes to what you were saying about how you've never truly made it. And people can look at somebody like yourself who you're working with some of the most elite level athletes in the world champions, people that are like on the world stage, and you're working with them in a field of something that you're passionate about, and you're still like, oh, I haven't made it. I'm not exactly where I want to be in life. And I think a key takeaway from that is you have to be happy with where you're currently at, and not just think that you're going to be happy once you get to the next place. And I think a lot of the work that you do with people when it comes to breath work and regulating the nervous system and just figuring out how they can be happy and feeling good with where they're currently at is just so vitally important, because the grass is always greener on the other side. But if you can't find a way to be happy and be okay with where you're at, then you're going to be searching for a long time.
Yeah. Well, happiness, like, how do you create, because really everyone wants happiness, right? But how do you cultivate happiness? It's through experience and challenges. Like 100%. If I look back on my life so far, the times where I was most content, most satisfied, my happiest was when I had the least amount of things. I was traveling around the world with a backpack and my surfboards. I was traveling on a shoestring, like on a real shoestring. And man, that was the most content and satisfied I've ever felt. And so I'm trying to replicate that in my life now, because it's easy to buy into the bullshit. But I need a new couch. I need the better car. I need the more things. And one thing that I really try to do with our household is just be very careful what we bring in, and try to simplify it. The complexity is in the simplicity. If you can, simplifying something is not easy. It's not easy at all. And I'm trying to simplify my life. And I watch people around me that are just hugely stressed, and their lives they've created such complicated lives, right?
Definitely. That's like, for us, I'm 29, they're 27, and a lot of people around us are building a lot of complexity in their lives now. And We're out here living in a 1-bedroom apartment with 3 mattresses up top with a kitchen that's like 200 square feet, but we're happy as shit because we get to be outside every day and just enjoy life. And it's simple. Every day is very, very the same, but very beautiful. And I want to continue to foster that in my life because I've been around enough really wealthy people at our gym back home and just throughout life. And I'm like, I know that the more complexity you build, oftentimes it's just you have more things that are taking your time and you don't end up being able to do jack shit.
That's right. It's like it's like simple analogy is like I got this container shed, right, and I popped it on our section here, and because I wanted more space to put all the things that I've accumulated, bikes and surfboards, and a bare fridge and things like that, and that was all good. So I chucked it there, and then it started rusting. So then I had to stand it right back, repaint it, and then the water was sitting on the roof, so I had to put a roof on it, and then I had to line the inside of it, and it became this thing that was just like, I just wanted a container, but it's taken up so much of my time, energy, and focus. And it's the same with all of these things that you bring into your life. They require maintenance and they require your time, energy, and focus. So simplifying things is just not easy, especially when you have gone down that right route of attaining more and more things. And when I was 29, I was over in I was traveling, but I was over in Cornwall lifeguarding. I'd lifeguard for 6 months of the year. I'd make enough money to then travel for the other 6 months. I had a Ford Escort panel van that I took down to Morocco twice, and I just look back at that, and again, it's just like, man, that had its challenges. Like, of course it does, and I'm sure what you're doing over there brings its own challenges. But life was just simple, like or relatively simple compared to like owning a business and all of the complexity that comes with that. And what I'm starting to learn is like I can keep scaling. Like I can keep scaling my business. I can employ more people. I can do this. I can do that. But to what point do you actually stop scaling? And because again, like scaling brings its own stress and complexity. So I think I remember working with this guy. He was like super rich guy, and he said to me, multi-millionaire, money was no problem for him. He could do whatever he wanted. And he said, the happiest or the most content I ever was when I went from 140 grand to 180 grand. He said, I then got to 500, and it was like, right now I have to get to 1 million. Then I got to 1 million, I have to get to 2 million. And he said, I wish it never brought me, like making more money never brought me more happiness. It just brought, he was telling me it just brought more complexity.
Yeah. Oh man. And well, I guess that's a question I have for you then, is like at the stage you're at and where you're going, aside from being the best, which I think you can cultivate through learning and experience and doing what you're doing, what at this point motivates you to scale the business?
What motivates me to scale the business? I guess what motivates me is like my plan, my goals, the things that I want to achieve with the business. What motivates me is people, like tapping into the energy of the people that I work with, the athletes that I train, and learning from them, and then being able to apply that into the next person. I get really excited about people that come to me with a challenge. But I guess like what is motivating me is self-betterment, like just improving myself and hitting the challenges that I set myself. And I want to build the business into something that like is more streamlined and requires less manual labor, I guess.
Yeah.
allows me to do the things that I'm really passionate about doing, because I want to be doing this in like 10, 15, 20 years time. And in order to do that, you have to have that. Well, in order for me to do it, I have to have the passion for what I'm doing. And there's certain things at the moment that I'm really passionate and I enjoy doing, and there's other things that just I do not enjoy doing them, but at the moment I have to do them to build the business.
Yeah.
I guess that's the same with that's the same with anything in life and any job. But I don't know. There's like, we're just taking the business now online and creating a online community, and that is like very motivating for me because I want to get good at that. And we're building out courses. We've just finished building an online performance breathing course, and that's something that I'm really proud of. Like, I spent a lot of time, a lot of man hours creating that course, and that course is like the culmination of 8 years of working with high performers in terms of breathing development and simplifying that process. Broken down into 3 modules: breathing mechanics, breathing to elicit calm, and dynamic breathing training. And this is stuff that I've applied with all of the people that I've worked with, but more importantly with myself, going through chronic pain and my own health journey, and understanding how breathing was intrinsically linked to my nervous system, my energy, my sleep, everything, right? Every single emotional state. And that really was the last bit of the puzzle for me getting out of chronic pain, was understanding that my breathing was off. And that was like stimulating that stress response constantly. Shallow, you guys know all that connection there, shallow breathing. So building this breathing course out, man, I want to get it out there, and that's I guess why I'm talking about it. And we're starting to build out, other courses on this online platform, and I want to make this stuff more available to people, because I tend to work with people that can afford the training, right? I want to get it out. I want to make it affordable for everyone, because it comes back to that original question: what's the difference between athletes and non-athletes? And does the training differ? It's the same stuff. It's the same exercises. It's just how you can change the variables. It's like, you can get a nice bath at 1 degree, or you can get a nice bath at 10 degrees. Some people need to start at 10 degrees. Other people, that they have a high stress tolerance and they need to start at 1 degree. So, yeah.
Hey, and we've taken a ton of your time, so why don't, as the last thing here, where can people go to find that? If they've listened to the podcast and they want to learn more about that course, where do they actually go to sign up?
Yeah, my company's name is Integrated Training. Instagram is Integrated Training. There's a link there in the bio section of my Instagram. To our website, and also to our online school platform, the community, and the online breathing course. Probably that is the best way.
Awesome. I mean, we could talk to you for hours, but we wanted to be mindful of the time here.
A little bit envious of where you guys are situated over there. I obviously follow you on Instagram, and you're not only putting the stuff out there, but you're actually living that life, which is, I think, is very important.
Thank you.
Stuff to actually be immersed in it, and obviously you guys are, and so what a cool thing to be able to do, and then to be able to get this knowledge out there. And pretty stoked to be on this podcast, and the fact that you started this podcast and you're getting even more of this important information out there is awesome.
Yeah. It's, again, like for us too, since I was 20, and these guys kind of followed right in behind, but it's what we're passionate about. It's what we love, and it feels like play. So being able to do this and have people like you respect what we're doing means more than anything, because that's what we strive for, is like people that we look up to and are like, they're the real deal. We want to be embodying a presence that makes those people be like, yeah, okay, you guys are doing the right thing. So having you come on and give us a nod there means a lot to us, for sure.
Easy. I'll get over there at some point. And your challenge today is to get out on that surf.
Yeah, I'll let you know if we do. I'll see if I have the balls.
All right, Dave. We appreciate your time today. Thanks so much, and hopefully we can do this again in the future,
or see you in New Zealand at some point. That would be. We've never been there yet, so it'd be badass to plan a trip and get out there.
That would be amazing.
Always welcome.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Cheers, Dave.
The Primitive Patterns Podcast. It's time to live your mystery.